This week's reaction video is from Mel Fugate, and he talked about unethical behavior in the workplace. He said 98% of the employees have experienced unethical behavior at work. And then the next thing that he went on to talk about, which I found interesting, was he said, asking the question, how many feel that they're punished in their review with their reputation? Said that 27% say that they were the target of bullying as an employee. 72% have witnessed it. And then he said 48% of employees intentionally decrease their work effort due to the bullying. 47% intentionally decreased time spent at work. 63% lost work time to avoid the offender. 66% said their performance declined, and 12% said that they left their job because of it. And then he also brought up that executives spend 15% or 7 weeks of their time dealing with unethical conduct. Going on from there, talked about legal versus ethical liability and said that it was a crisis of leadership and culture in higher ed. The legal liability talked about test of smarts, ethical liability, test of character. When it comes to unethical leadership, he defined it as allowing unethical conduct to continue. There are cases where they say that they were not knowing of it, but when you know and you're not acting on it, that's definitely what he was referring to when it came to the unethical leadership. And when there is someone in a leadership position that is allowing the unethical behavior continue, that breeds into the culture of the environment. Also talked about knowing and doing nothing different from it, being aware that it's happening and then not making any changes. When there is something happening and the leader is involved, which ultimately it always should be, the leader involved, because when it comes to employment, you're the employee and then you have a manager and then there's always someone above them usually, and so on and so forth. So looking at that tier and how that works, it's always going to go up to the leader, and they should be just as responsible for that behavior that is affecting the employee, because if it's happening in the workplace, it's their responsibility to make sure that they have the proper policies and regulations put in place, and if it continues to happen, there needs to be consequences for that action, whether it be written up, verbal warnings, written warnings, and then ultimately being let go from the position based on the severity of the offense, or the evidence of it continuing to happen over time. Also brought up, there are times that there's no consequences for leaders. The halo of reputations, I can definitely relate to that. Years of service, everybody likes him. He or she wouldn't do that. Cultures within enabling the quote good people to do bad things. You see that over and over again. People have been in leadership positions for a set amount of time, and they develop that reputation. They get their little group that's supporting them. Usually as a leader, you can have, like 3 different groups. You have a third of the people over here that are 100% on board with you. They agree with you. They support you. And then you have the other 3% that's in the middle, third of the group. I don't know. I'm probably not doing the percentages correctly, but you have a portion of people in the middle that are kind of on the fence. They're kind of supporting you. They're just waiting to see, okay, am I going to fully be on board, or do I kind of support them? And then you're always going to have this other group over here that no matter what you do, no matter what you say, no matter what changes you make, even though they benefit from those changes in a positive way, they're never going to be on board with you. So as a leader, ultimately, when you're having those issues, you focus on the positive, the people that are supporting you. You hopefully will make such an impact that the people in the middle are going to come over and be on board with you. And then the ones that aren't going to support you, makes it really hard to manage them. You definitely are going to manage them to a certain point because that is your job, but you can only do so much. You're not always going to convince them to be on board with your ideas. And, ultimately, maybe that would be a decision that has to be made in the end as to whether or not they should continue with the program, if that's how they feel. He also talked about performance metrics. If it shows on paper, hey, we're making money, we're winning these championships, we're receiving all these donations, things can't be that bad. People look at that too. Hubris, talking about rules apply to others, unwillingness to admit the mistakes, definitely have seen that. BBTL syndrome, been the boss too long, never the target. Whenever they've been there for a set amount of time, there's no way that they would ever do that. They develop that relationship and that reputation where people just don't believe, there's no way that they could do that. But ultimately, look at what happened with Penn State. Obviously, it does happen, which is something that he brought up. Talked about antidotes. Would you tolerate bullying of a customer? As a customer, as a student, then why would you tolerate it of an employee? There's that different culture when it comes into it. As far as being an employee, it's like that's your livelihood. That's how you support your family. That is, something that you can't just walk away from. Because if you walk away from your job, how are you going to pay your bills? How are you going to make rent? How are you going to keep the lights on? So there's the difference right there. You can't just walk away and be like, well, I don't care. I'm done. See you later. No, you have to have a game plan set up. You have to have something in place, or else you are just going to be stuck. So that's, I think that's a lot of the reasons why whenever he said, 12% said that they left their job because of bullying, I can completely see why. Because especially if you're set up in a really good position as far as making good money and have the benefits, you do put up with quite a bit. As far as the accountability, it definitely needs to go to everyone, including the leader. And when the leader does make those tough decisions and make sure that people are held accountable for their actions, you definitely need to celebrate those actions and don't sweep the others under the rug. Everyone needs to be held accountable. When it comes to the actions of the leader, definitely agree with what he said. The actions speak louder than any policy or code. You're a model. You're supposed to model the behavior that you expect your employees to do. I think of that every day when I come into work as a leader, in a leader position myself. I know that my employees are looking at me. I have that three set. I have some that are 100% on board with me and they're in complete agreement with everything that I'm doing and they understand the purpose of my job. I have some that are kind of sort of with me and still on the fence waiting to see, not 100% there yet. And then I have this small group, fortunately it is small, I have this small group who is just fighting me tooth and nail. It doesn't matter what I say or do or why I state that it's important, or even showing them by my actions of the positive outcome that is occurring with the program of what I'm doing. They're still just there being negative Nancy's. So I continue to walk in every day. I still, come in, do my job, and continue to work on making the program better for everyone. That's what I was hired to do, and I'm going to continue to come in and do my job. This entire video, I 100% could agree with. I was on board with what he was saying. It really is interesting when you look at it and knowing that it is the responsibility of each individual when it comes to the behavior, and knowing that it ultimately does stop with the boss. There's a lot of things changing at my current employment. My manager is leaving the program as of June. We are going to be getting some type of new management. We don't even know what that looks like. Our program itself is looking at making a lot of changes for next year. It's a school system, so I will let you know that it's a school system, and a lot of things are changing with that. So there's going to be a lot of changes within my my own role as to what exactly that looks like. So there is a lot going on. So it does make it hard. But as far as being ethical and unethical, it is important, of course, to remain ethical in your position. And whenever you see things that are unethical, which I have, make sure that you do report it to the proper individuals and hope that they will address the issue and take the proper steps to make sure that it is not something that continues to be repeated. Because ultimately, in the end, what you will find is that program will fail, and that would be a reason why. Thank you.